Welcome to Midnight Whispers, where the night doesn't whisper, it warns. As you lie in the safety of your bed, imagine footsteps in the forest, eyes watching from behind the trees, and truths too terrifying to ignore. These aren't just stories, they're echoes from the shadows, real accounts whispered under breath by those who survived. So close your eyes, but don't fall asleep too fast. The darkness remembers. Imagine waking up to find your deepest, most buried secrets laid bare for everyone to see. Or worse, hearing your most intimate conversations played back to you by an anonymous sender. How quickly would your sense of safety crumble? For the residents of Asheville, a sleepy coal mining town in Kentucky, their world shattered not with a bang, but with a whisper delivered in plain white envelopes. In the mid-82nd, Asheville was the kind of place where knowing which family bought generic cereal was the height of local intrigue. Then came the letters. Mrs. Hoffman was the first. A letter arrived detailing her late husband's gambling debts. Facts only 3 people knew, 2 of whom were dead. Her terror was palpable. What would you do if a letter arrived revealing a secret you thought was buried forever? How would you react? Within days, more letters arrived. The Hendersons learned their son was stealing from the church. The Johnsons discovered an affair, including a specific birthmark on the lover that only an intimate partner would know. And the Presleys? Their letter exposed Mr. Presley's embezzlement from the volunteer fire department, complete with photocopied bank statements and forged signatures. These weren't rumors. They were irrefutable truths, meticulously researched and devastatingly accurate. The town dissolved into a maelstrom of suspicion. Friends accused friends. Neighbors eyed each other with distrust. In a small town where everyone knows everyone, who would you suspect first when a phantom hand turns your private life into public spectacle? The letters kept coming, always hand-delivered in the dead of night, their sender invisible, untouchable. Half the town kept watch, but no one ever saw a thing. Even the police chief was stumped, confirming only that the handwriting was deliberately disguised. But the content escalated from embarrassing to dangerous when the Nelsons received a letter exposing their 5-year-old daughter's secret affair with a married man. It included motel receipts and photographs, information only a dedicated stalker could obtain. Mr. Nelson, a quiet mechanic, erupted in a rage, grabbing his shotgun and confronting the man, leaving him wounded. The letters had drawn blood, turning a community's secrets into a catalyst for violence. The aftermath was horrific. Mr. Nelson was arrested, his daughter traumatized. Yet, the letters didn't stop. They even targeted those trying to solve the mystery, including Chief McQuaid, whose own corruption was exposed, leading to his arrest. Neighbors started receiving letters detailing each other's attempts to investigate the writer, turning them against one another in a frantic, desperate search for the truth. It was as if the writer could see everything, hear everything, and knew exactly how to dismantle the town from the inside out. People changed locks, bought security cameras, and slept with weapons. But still, the letters found their way. By 1984, Asheville was a ghost town. Its population halved, its businesses shuttered, its trust irrevocably broken. The most chilling evolution? The letters began to predict future events. The Grimm family was warned their son would be caught stealing on a specific date. He was. The Cooper's daughter was predicted to be caught drinking behind the church. She was. It was as if the writer wasn't just observing, but orchestrating the town's suffering. Then, 5 years after the first letter, came the final message, addressed to the entire town. The truth has been served. My work here is complete. The letters stopped. The writer vanished. But Asheville was never the same. Its wounds were deep, its trust shattered, leaving behind a community perpetually wary, forever checking their mailboxes with a mixture of hope and dread. But Asheville wasn't the only small town living under an invisible gaze. In the summer of 1993, Milford, Wisconsin, a town famous for its cheese and quiet predictability, found itself under a different kind of surveillance. Our narrator, a shift supervisor at the local cheese plant, found a plain manila envelope in his mailbox. Inside was a cassette tape, simply labeled "Listen." What followed was deeply unsettling. A crisp, clear recording of a private conversation between a daughter and her elderly father discussing mundane, intimate details. It felt wrong, invasive. Imagine hearing your own family's intimate moments, your whispered concerns, your arguments, played back to you by an anonymous stranger. How would that change your sense of home? The next day brought another tape, this time spliced with fragments of multiple conversations. A man complaining about his boss, a woman discussing her husband's drinking, even an intimate bedroom conversation. The chilling realization came when our narrator recognized one of the voices. Janet from the post office. These weren't random people. These were his neighbors. Their deepest privacies laid bare. The local sheriff was dismissive, but the narrator knew he had to dig deeper. His investigation led him to Hartley Electronics and Collectibles, a vendor at the monthly flea market. The horrifying truth began to emerge. Tiny microphones concealed within everyday household items, ceramic garden gnomes, decorative wind chimes, birdhouses, refurbished radios. Someone had deliberately planted listening devices in the very objects people brought into their homes, into their most private spaces, systematically recording their lives. The fear was primal, a violation of the most fundamental right to privacy. The community rallied, discovering at least 24 homes that had been bugged. They destroyed the devices, but the damage was irreversible. The sense of security, the very fabric of trust in Milford, was ripped apart. The man named Hartley had vanished, leaving behind only the terrifying echo of lives turned into a public spectacle. In both Asheville and Milford, an unseen hand shattered the illusion of small-town safety. Secrets were exposed, trust was destroyed, and communities were left with permanent scars, forever changed by invisible watchers. But what happens when the very people sworn to protect you, those you trust with your well-being, are the ones pulling the strings of evil? Let's uncover chilling tales of betrayal from within. We often put our blind faith in those who wear a uniform or offer a helping hand. But what if the person you trust with your life, or the security of your home, is actually the monster hiding in plain sight? In the seemingly idyllic heartland, some of the most chilling evils emerge not from the shadows, but from the trusted pillars of a community. Take Brookhaven, Nebraska. In the late 92nd, a quiet, slow-moving town where everyone knew everyone, or at least they thought they did. Our narrator, working part-time at the local hardware store, often helped care for his Uncle Frank. Their routines included a weekly stop at Whitlow's Pharmacy, a place as trusted as the local church. The first death, Mrs. Zellen Wade, a soft-spoken widow, was dismissed as a heart attack. Then, days later, Mr. Grant Holloway, another healthy senior, passed in his sleep. 2 healthy seniors gone in a week? Murmurs began. Uncle Frank noticed it first. His vitamins tasted different. Not bitter, just wrong. He joked about it, but the narrator spotted a tiny, melted burn mark on the inside of the pill bottle cap. They stopped the pills just in time. The narrator's gut screamed that something was wrong. At Whitlow's, the pharmacist's assistant, Jeremy, dismissed his concerns about the bottle, but the narrator caught that flicker of panic in his eyes. Have you ever felt that unsettling intuition, a quiet alarm bell ringing in your mind that something just isn't right, even when everyone else is shrugging it off? He started asking questions. Both Mrs. Wade and Mr. Holloway had filled their prescriptions at Whitlow's, and both had been encouraged to buy the same specific line of premium senior vitality supplements that summer. The pieces began to click into place. A local reporter, Dana Bricks, was already chasing rumors of elderly deaths. When she dug deeper, the horrifying truth emerged. 6 similar deaths, all connected to Whitlow. An independent toxicology report revealed traces of a lab-altered compound, similar to cyanide, administered in such low doses that it mimicked natural causes. Someone was microdosing poison. The town's trust crumbled the day pharmacist Mr. Carlton was arrested. Mr. Carlton, the man who remembered birthdays, handed out lollipops to kids, sponsored local baseball teams, the kind of man who radiated kindness. But beneath that white coat and warm smile was a monster drowning in debt, gambling losses, and the secret of a second family. He'd convinced several seniors to sign over power of attorney, or gained access through trusting family members. It wasn't just sick, it was surgical, cold, and calculated. Uncle Frank was one of the lucky ones. He'd unknowingly ingested small doses of poison for 2 weeks. Carlton's trial revealed manipulated inventory logs and a chilling personal notebook. Pages filled with names of real people, neighbors, friends, lined up like a checklist. It was a betrayal so profound it redefined evil for Brookhaven. The town grew quieter, more guarded. The old pharmacy became a pet grooming place, but its shadow lingered, a perpetual reminder that evil doesn't always look how you think it will. Sometimes, it wears a white coat and asks how your weekend was. Could you ever spot the signs of such a betrayal in someone you trusted implicitly? What would it take for you to question a pillar of your community? A similar, insidious betrayal unfolded in Magnolia Heights, Oxford, Mississippi, in 2006. Our narrator, Jason, and his wife, Angela, lived in a quiet neighborhood where crime was unheard of. Then, break-ins started. Mrs. Patterson's garage ransacked, her Christmas decorations stolen. This wasn't just petty theft. It was a violation of their deepest sense of safety. The police were understaffed and offered little help. Into this void stepped Captain Mitchell Broussard, a recently retired sheriff who had moved into the neighborhood 6 months prior. He radiated authority, proposing a comprehensive neighborhood watch, a phone tree, patrol schedules, and crucially, a system where everyone would share their daily routines, work schedules, grocery runs, even vacation plans. The more we know about each other's movements, the better we can spot suspicious activity, he explained. It all made perfect sense, and everyone signed up, feeling a surge of hope. The program worked at first. The break-ins stopped. Captain Broussard was a machine of organization, emailing daily updates, keeping meticulous logs of everyone's whereabouts. But then, tiny cracks appeared. Jason noticed Broussard's house dark one night when he claimed to be working late. Angela saw him at the grocery store when he said he was out of town. Then Jason saw him, late one night, dressed in black, carrying a duffel bag, far from his patrol route. Broussard's defensive tone when questioned was a stark contrast to his usual confidence. The break-ins resumed, but these were different. More targeted, more professional. The Hendersons were hit during their daughter's wedding, an event Broussard knew about. Valuables were taken from hidden drawers, with no signs of forced entry. It was as if the thieves had access to the detailed schedule information Broussard had collected. Think about the information you share with your community, your social media posts about vacations, your trusted neighbors. Could that information ever be weaponized against you? The truth crashed down when Jason saw Broussard at the empty house of the Vincentis, who were on vacation, carrying a bag. Broussard's car was found with break-in tools and stolen items. The whole sick scheme unraveled. Captain Broussard had used the neighborhood watch as the perfect cover, exploiting their trust and the detailed information they'd willingly given him. He was the fox guarding the hen house, meticulously planning reconnaissance missions, the early break-ins, to justify his security efforts, then striking with surgical precision once he had everyone's complete trust. The betrayal was deep, scarring the community. He had weaponized their desire for safety, turning their shared trust into their greatest vulnerability. In both Brookhaven and Magnolia Heights, the Guardians became predators, twisting their positions of trust into tools of deceit and destruction. While some monsters wear a friendly face, others operate with a cold, clinical precision, orchestrating suffering for a shocking purpose. Prepare yourself for stories where lives become pawns in a twisted game of calculation. Beyond simple betrayal lies a deeper, colder evil, the kind that plans suffering with meticulous detail, turning human lives into mere tools for a larger, sinister agenda. How far would someone go to achieve their goals or their warped sense of good? Our next stories reveal the chilling rationality behind extreme cruelty, where the architects of suffering build their monstrous plans brick by calculated brick. Let's begin in Mercer, Oklahoma, a place where folks still measured time by harvest seasons and church bells in 1995. That summer, I was 24, fresh out of college, back home to help my parents run our hardware store in Mercer, Oklahoma. Mercer was God's country, my dad always said, untouched by the chaos of big cities. We had clean air, honest work, and the purest well water anyone could ask for. Crystal clear, ice cold, pumped straight from the aquifer beneath our red dirt roads. We never once questioned what we were drinking. That changed on a scorching Wednesday morning in July. Mrs. Abernathy, usually tough as nails, stumbled into our store, her face pale as milk, clutching her stomach. "Something's wrong with the water," she whispered. "Harold's in the hospital. The baby, too." Her raw terror made my chest tighten. Within hours, the phone wouldn't stop ringing. The Petersons rushed their twin daughters to the ER after they started vomiting blood. Old Mr. Fitzgerald collapsed, convulsing and frothing at the mouth. The Crawfords' livestock were dropping dead, their youngest son having seizures. Every call painted the same nightmarish picture: people drinking their morning coffee, then falling violently ill. But here's the crucial detail. Not everyone was getting sick. Just specific families, scattered across a rough horseshoe shape around the eastern edge of town. All rural, all with their own private wells. My dad and I marked each affected household on a map behind the counter, watching as a crimson arc of suffering spread across the county. It was too precise, too deliberate to be random. The state health department arrived by Friday, a convoy of white vans, officials in hazmat suits. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, the lead investigator, pulled me aside. Her steel-gray eyes were grave as she spoke. "We found industrial chemicals in the affected wells," she said quietly. "Trichloroethylene, benzene, heavy metals. This isn't an accident. Someone is deliberately poisoning these people." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Someone in our community, someone we knew, was systematically murdering their neighbors. The chemicals were expensive industrial solvents, not typical farm supplies. Whoever was doing this had access to dangerous materials and knew exactly what they were doing. The thought that one of our own could be capable of such calculated evil made me question everything. That night, I stared at the ceiling, wondering if I'd unknowingly shaken hands with a monster. The investigation took a disturbing turn. The contamination wasn't random. It was surgical. Tiny, carefully concealed holes had been drilled near the wellheads. A specialized drill bit, used for precision work. The chemicals injected directly into the water supply, leaving minimal trace. This wasn't some deranged amateur. This was planned, methodical, executed with frightening expertise. The FBI was called in. Our town crawled with federal agents. What terrified us further was the timeline. The poisoning had been happening for weeks, maybe months, in small doses, building up until it reached toxic levels. Little Amy Peterson, only 7, developed permanent kidney damage. The monster doing this wasn't just trying to make people sick. They were slowly, methodically destroying lives. The calculated cruelty of it all was almost impossible to comprehend. I found myself studying every face, wondering if they could be capable of such inhumanity. The breakthrough came when Agent Rebecca Stone, a compact woman with intense green eyes, spread a survey map on our counter, revealing the breakthrough. "All the affected properties," she said, "are sitting on prime grazing land that borders the Whitmore Ranch." Caleb Whitmore. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. A third-generation rancher, pillar of the community, school board member, generous church donor. The idea that he could be behind this was impossible, but Agent Stone laid out the evidence. For 2 years, Whitmore had been quietly trying to buy up all these properties, making lowball offers. The contamination pattern perfectly matched the boundaries of the land he wanted. "He's been systematically poisoning his neighbors to force them off their properties," Agent Stone explained, her voice cold with disgust. "Once they're desperate enough, he swoops in with cash offers for their worthless, contaminated land. It's one of the most calculated real estate schemes we've ever seen." The realization that someone could orchestrate such elaborate suffering just to expand his business empire made me physically ill. This wasn't just about money. It was a complete lack of human conscience. The arrest happened that afternoon. FBI agents surrounded Whitmore's ranch house while he was having lunch with his family. He looked genuinely confused as they led him away in handcuffs, playing the innocent man. But they found everything. Barrels of industrial chemicals hidden in a barn, drilling equipment with contaminated soil traces, and a detailed map showing exactly which wells he'd targeted and when. He'd been buying chemicals through a fake company in Texas. The man who sat next to me at church every Sunday for 20 years had been living a double life as a calculated poisoner. What haunts me most is how easily he fooled us all. The guy who helped neighbors, brought casseroles, coached Little League. The FBI found records showing he'd planned this for over 3 years. He was sentenced to life without parole. Families received compensation, but the damage was done. Trust, once broken on such a fundamental level, leaves scars that never completely heal. Is there ever a justification for taking a life, even if it's for profit, for land, for power? What does that say about the dark corners of human ambition? But sometimes, the architect of suffering believes they are acting out of compassion, blurring the lines between healing and horrifying. Our next tale takes us to Pine Valley, Idaho, where a nurse believed she was administering mercy through lethal doses. Pine Valley has always been the kind of town where secrets don't stay buried long. I became a registered nurse at the Pine Valley Community Clinic in Pine Valley, Idaho, in 2018, fresh out of nursing school. The clinic sat on Main Street, run by Dr. Martinez since the Carter administration. Most days we treated scraped knees and high blood pressure, and the elderly folks treated us like family. Mrs. Rodriguez brought homemade cookies. Mr. Stevens always asked about my mom's garden. It felt like the perfect place to build a career. Until October 2023 changed everything I thought I knew about healing. The trouble started with Diane Walsh, our head medical assistant. Diane was a soft-spoken woman in her 52nd. Wire-rimmed glasses, neat bun, she was everyone's favorite librarian. Diane knew every patient's medication history by heart, could draw blood from the most difficult veins, and had a gentle way with scared kids. Dr. Martinez trusted her completely. All the elderly patients adored her. If I had to pick the most caring person I'd ever met, Diane would have been at the top of that list, which is why what happened next still gives me nightmares. The first sign was on a Thursday morning. I walked in at 7 a.m. and found Diane already in the break room. Coffee mug clutched, eyes red and puffy, 1,000-yard stare. She mumbled about a rough night, which wasn't like her. Diane was usually cracking jokes, but lately, she'd been quieter, more withdrawn. I chalked it up to stress from her husband's recent cancer diagnosis, but deep down, something felt different. She moved through the clinic carrying the weight of the world, her face crumpling into exhaustion when she thought no one was watching. The real alarm bells started ringing when we lost 3 elderly patients in just 2 weeks. Death wasn't unusual in Pine Valley, but these cases were different. Each had been relatively stable after routine checkups, yet each passed away peacefully in their sleep within 48 hours of visiting our clinic. Mr. Grayson, managing his diabetes, died Monday night. Mrs. Chen, joint pain, passed Wednesday. Old Pete Murphy, joking about outliving his 3rd wife, died quietly in his recliner. Their families were devastated but grateful they hadn't suffered. They all described the same thing. Their loved ones seemed unusually calm and sleepy after their appointments, then simply never woke up. Dr. Martinez kept saying it was coincidence, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. What made it worse was Diane's increasingly erratic behavior. She started volunteering to handle all medication preparations for elderly patients, insisting she wanted to ease the burden. During appointments, she'd disappear into the supply closet for unusually long periods, emerging with a strange, almost serene expression. She stayed late after closing, claiming to organize files, but declined any help. Most unsettling, her comments about elderly patients shifted. Instead of warm concern, she'd make odd remarks about how tired they looked, how they seemed to be suffering more than they let on. When I mentioned Mrs. Chen seemed cheerful. Diane shook her head and said people hide their pain. Her demeanor had shifted from nurturing to something that felt almost predatory. The breaking point came one Friday afternoon when I accidentally walked in on Diane preparing medications in the supply room. She was hunched over a small glass vial, drawing up a clear liquid with a syringe. Definitely not standard medication. She jumped, shoved the vial into her pocket, face white, stammering about checking Mr. Williamson's blood pressure medication dosages. But Mr. Williamson was only there for a routine physical, no injections. I asked what was in the vial. She gave a long, rambling explanation about emergency medications, her voice shaking, avoiding eye contact. After she left, I checked our inventory. Several vials of midazolam were missing, a powerful sedative that, in high doses, could easily stop breathing. That's when the horrible truth clicked. I might be working alongside a killer. I spent the weekend in a panic. Part of me wanted to believe I was jumping to conclusions. This was Diane, my mentor, who taught me how to comfort grieving families. But the evidence was impossible to ignore. I started cross-referencing patient files with deaths. A chilling pattern emerged. Every deceased elderly patient had been scheduled for late afternoon appointments, when only Diane and Dr. Martinez were typically in the building. All had received B12 injections, which wasn't part of their usual treatment plans. When I called their families, several mentioned their loved ones had been unusually drowsy, peaceful, ready to go. The picture that emerged was terrifying. Diane had been systematically identifying patients she believed were suffering, then administering lethal doses of sedatives under the guise of routine care. The confrontation happened Monday morning. I couldn't bear my suspicions anymore. I arrived early. Diane was methodically preparing for the day, with that eerie calm. I told her I knew. Instead of denying, she sat down heavily, crying. Through her tears, she confessed everything. She'd watched these elderly patients struggle with pain and illness, seen their families exhausted from caregiving, and convinced herself she was performing acts of mercy. She repeated that she was helping them find peace, couldn't bear their suffering. The most chilling part was her description of the process. Waiting until Dr. Martinez was busy, administering the midazolam injections while holding their hands and whispering, "Everything will be okay." She genuinely believed she was being compassionate. The complete disconnect between her intentions and her actions made my skin crawl. Here was someone I trusted completely, playing God with people's lives. What happened next was the hardest thing I've ever done. I told Diane I had to report her. She nodded, defeated. She didn't beg. When I called the police, my voice shook so badly the dispatcher asked me to repeat myself 3 times. Within an hour, our clinic swarmed with investigators. Diane was led away in handcuffs. She was charged with multiple counts of murder. Dr. Martinez was devastated. He kept saying he should have noticed, but Diane had been so careful. Families of the deceased were torn between grief and anger. Some felt betrayed. Others admitted they were almost relieved their loved ones had died peacefully. The investigation revealed Diane had killed at least 7 elderly patients over 3 months. Authorities found detailed notes in her car, where she'd written about each patient's suffering and her reasons for helping them transition. Some entries were heartbreaking, describing terminal cancer patients and the emotional and financial burden on families. In her twisted logic, she thought she was providing a service the medical system couldn't offer, ending suffering before it became unbearable. She'd researched dosages, timed injections, practiced explanations. She turned mercy killing into a carefully planned operation, all while maintaining the facade of compassion. The trial lasted 6 months. Diane pleaded guilty to 7 counts of second-degree murder and was sentenced to life without parole. During sentencing, she gave a long speech about sparing families agony, about how the medical system failed these patients. Even then, she maintained her actions were compassionate. The judge called her a predator. Watching her get sentenced was satisfying and heartbreaking. I saw glimpses of my mentor, the caring colleague, and the killer. I still struggle to reconcile the two. The Pine Valley Community Clinic never reopened. Dr. Martinez retired. The building sits empty. I transferred to a hospital in Boise, but I still have nightmares. The hardest part is understanding what drove her. The desire to ease suffering is natural for healthcare workers, but there's a line between compassion and murder, and Diane crossed it 7 times, convincing herself she was doing the right thing. I'll never forget the look on her face when she confessed. That mixture of guilt and self-righteousness, which made me realize how dangerous good intentions can become when not tempered by respect for human life and choice. But not all stories have a clear resolution, or even a visible villain. Sometimes, the evil vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving behind only shadows and questions that haunt a community for decades. You see, while some evils are loud and calculated, others are silent. They appear out of nowhere, pluck a life clean from existence, and then disappear, leaving behind only a void and endless questions. That's what happened in Lisbon, the kind of small town where the biggest news was usually a county fair prize or a stray cow. But in the summer of 1993, Lisbon learned that some shadows run deeper than the densest woods. I was working maintenance for the County Roads Division back then, just long days patching asphalt and clearing brush along the back highways of Lisbon. Nothing thrilling. Everyone knew everyone, or at least recognized their trucks. That morning, I'd clocked in around 6 a.m., and by mid-afternoon, I was finishing up near County Road 18, close to one of those forgotten rest stops. You know the type. 2 cracked picnic tables, a faded vending machine that probably hadn't worked since the 82nd, and a single bathroom that somehow always smelled like mildew and bleach at the same time. I'd driven past it 100 times, never thought twice. That day, though, something felt wrong. Not eerie, not dramatic, just off routine. Around 4 p.m., I noticed a cruiser parked crooked at the far end of the lot, half in the grass. It was one of ours, Sheriff's Department. At first, I thought maybe the deputy inside had pulled over to take a nap or make a call. But as I passed by in my truck, I realized the driver's side door was hanging open. The lights weren't flashing, but the engine was idling, and the radio was still squawking with dispatch chatter, like someone had just stepped out for a second and never came back. No one else was around. I got out, walked over, called out a couple times, "Hello," and peeked inside. No sign of anyone. The laptop mount was still logged in, a bottle of water in the cup holder, half empty. I recognized the name on the screen. Deputy Lane Kessler. A young, polite guy, only on the force maybe a year or two, but people liked him. The last time I saw him was at the diner off Route 1, buying coffee for an old vet who didn't have enough change. That kind of guy. It didn't make sense that he'd leave his car like that. It didn't fit him. I didn't touch anything. I backed up, called the non-emergency number, and told them exactly what I saw. While I waited, I kept scanning the tree line. The rest stop backs up against an old cornfield on one side and a cluster of woods on the other, dense with those thick, clawing branches that always seem to block the light, even at noon. I didn't see movement, but the silence felt heavy. Not the peaceful kind, more like the world was holding its breath. Within 20 minutes, 2 patrol units pulled in, followed by an unmarked SUV. That's when everything started spiraling fast. They taped off the area quick. I stood back near my truck while one of the deputies asked me to go over what I saw, how long the car had been there, whether I noticed any other vehicles, people, anything strange. But honestly, it was just empty when I got there. Not even fresh tire tracks besides mine and the cruiser's. The weird part was the passenger door. It had a smudge near the handle, almost greasy, like someone with dirty gloves had touched it. Hard to miss in the sunlight. I mentioned it, but I don't know if they ever found anything off it. They kept circling the area, but it was all just grass, cracked pavement, and trees that didn't talk back. That night, the town Facebook page lit up. Rumors spread fast. Some folks said he got ambushed. Others claimed they saw a white van parked near the rest stop the night before. You know how people get when there are no answers. They fill in the blanks themselves. But one thing stuck out. No one saw him after midnight. His last radio log showed he called in a routine check just before 12:40 a.m. Then nothing. No distress call, no follow-up, just radio silence until I found the car almost 4 hours later. Whatever happened, it happened fast, clean, quiet. Over the next few days, the search ramped up. Helicopters scanned the fields. Dogs were brought in. Volunteers combed the woods. I joined the Saturday morning grid search and spent hours walking between rows of corn that reached up to my shoulders. The whole time, it felt like we were looking for someone who wasn't there anymore. Not just missing, but gone. Like he'd been plucked out of the world and erased. No footprints, no blood, no broken branches. just silence. But some of the guys whispered about a clearing deeper in the woods, one not marked on any maps, where it looked like people had been gathering. By the time Monday rolled around, the sheriff's department had shifted their tone. It wasn't a missing persons case anymore. They brought in federal agents, and we stopped getting updates. But word travels. One of my buddies from the county road crew, Brent, said he'd seen unmarked box trucks pulling off that exit late at night for months, never staying long, always in and out before dawn. We all thought it was just construction crews or supply runs. Now it looked more like something organized, coordinated. And maybe Deputy Kessler had caught a glimpse of something he wasn't supposed to. A week after the disappearance, a farmer named Len Harbin found a jacket buried under a pile of brush near the south fence of his property, about 2 miles from the rest stop, not visible from the road. It was standard sheriff's issue, name tag still attached. While never publicly confirmed, word was there was blood on the collar. That's when everything locked down even more. Len said unmarked trucks showed up that same afternoon, and by evening the brush was cleared, the soil was tested, and a huge section of his land was marked off. He told me later that they'd found tire impressions leading into a dirt trail he didn't even know existed, as if it had been used and then covered again. Deputy Kessler's body was never found, not officially. The mystery hung over Lisbon like a suffocating fog. But about a month after everything settled down, I got a message on Facebook from someone I didn't know. No profile picture, no mutual friends, just a short message. He did the right thing. Don't talk to anyone else about that day. I'll be honest, I didn't sleep that night. I deleted the message, logged off, and didn't bring it up again until now. Maybe I should have gone to someone with it. But part of me figured they already knew, whoever they are. Eventually, the department held a memorial for him. Full honors. His mom spoke. The whole town showed up, lining Main Street in silence while the cruisers rolled by, lights spinning slowly. I stood near the back and watched, but I couldn't stop thinking about that cruiser sitting there with the door open, like he'd stepped out just for a second, like he thought whatever he saw wasn't going to be a problem. To this day, the case remains unsolved. Deputy Kessler just vanished. His family never got closure. The community never got answers. And that silence, that heavy, unsettling silence, still hangs over Lisbon. It's a chilling reminder that sometimes the most profound evils aren't about what you see, but what you don't see. The perpetrators, the motive, the very truth just disappear into the ether. What do you think happened to Deputy Kessler? Share your theories below. Whether secrets were exposed, trust was shattered, lives were taken, or people simply disappeared. The common thread in all these tales is the indelible mark left on the communities. Now, let's delve into the lasting aftermath of hidden evil in the heartland. When the dust settles and the headlines fade, what truly remains of a town after it's been ripped apart by hidden evil? The visible wounds may heal, but the scars on a community's soul can last forever. We've journeyed through stories that peel back the idyllic facade of small-town life, revealing the insidious darkness lurking beneath. From the chilling paranoia of an unseen letter writer in Asheville and the invasive eavesdropper in Milford, to the calculated betrayals of a trusted pharmacist in Brookhaven and a manipulative sheriff in Magnolia Heights, and finally, to the cold, premeditated cruelty of Mercer's land grab and Pine Valley's twisted mercy, these tales share a common, unsettling thread: the profound and often permanent damage inflicted when evil takes root in the very places we expect to be safest. Each community, in its own harrowing way, faced an enemy that understood their routines, exploited their trust, and weaponized their most vulnerable secrets. Asheville and Milford taught us the terrifying fragility of privacy, how the mere idea of being watched can unravel the social fabric, turning neighbor against neighbor in a storm of suspicion. Imagine the weight of every conversation, every personal detail, suddenly feeling like a potential weapon in someone else's hands. How do you ever truly feel safe again when your deepest secrets are no longer your own? The psychological toll of that pervasive paranoia is immense, leaving communities forever wary, forever guarded. Then we saw the devastating impact of betrayal from those sworn to protect or serve. Brookhaven's pharmacist, a pillar of the community, quietly orchestrating deaths for financial gain. Magnolia Heights retired sheriff, turning a neighborhood watch into a sophisticated criminal enterprise. These aren't just stories of crime, they are parables of shattered trust. They force us to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil often wears a friendly face, speaks with reassuring words, and operates from positions of respect. How do you reconcile the image of a kind man with the monster beneath? And what does that do to your capacity for trust, not just in strangers, but in the very people you live alongside? Could you ever truly spot the signs of such a betrayal before it's too late? Mercer and Pine Valley offered a glimpse into a colder, more calculated malevolence. A rancher systematically poisoning his neighbors for land, meticulously planning their suffering. A nurse, convinced of her twisted compassion, administering lethal doses while holding a patient's hand. These acts transcend simple greed or rage. They speak to a terrifying rationality, where human lives become pawns in a larger, sinister game or a warped ideology. The precision, the methodical planning, the complete disconnect from human empathy, it forces us to ask, what dark corners exist in the human mind that allow such calculated cruelty to flourish, even under the guise of good intentions? And finally, Lisbon, a town left with the gnawing dread of an unsolved mystery, where a deputy simply vanished, leaving behind only unsettling clues and an enduring sense of unease. Here, the evil wasn't identified, the villain never found, but the shadow it cast was just as long and permanent. It reminds us that some wounds never heal, some questions never answered, leaving communities haunted by the unknown, forever on edge, forever wondering what lurks just beyond the familiar. The common denominator in all these narratives is not just the act of evil itself, but its enduring legacy. These towns, once vibrant and trusting, are left with permanent scars. Populations dwindle, businesses close, and the informal networks of support that once defined small-town life often crumble irrevocably. Recovery, if it comes at all, is a long, arduous journey, fraught with suspicion and the constant echo of what was lost. The idyllic small-town myth is shattered, replaced by a stark reality where safety is an illusion, and the quietest corners can harbor the most profound darkness. So, what's the most chilling lesson you've learned from these stories? Is it the vulnerability of privacy, the terrifying potential for betrayal from within, the cold logic of calculated cruelty, or the haunting power of the unexplained? Perhaps it's all of them. These aren't just isolated incidents. They are stark reminders of the intricate dance between good and evil that plays out in every community, big or small. They compel us to look closer, to question assumptions, and to recognize that vigilance isn't just for the big city. It's a necessary part of existence, even in the heartland. How do we protect ourselves when evil wears so many disguises, shifts its form, and often hides in plain sight? That's a question that echoes long after the story's end. If these tales of hidden evil have left you thinking, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the shadows, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us bring these crucial stories to light.